How's it going, everyone? Derek from Make Media Studios, and today I'm here with Ann Mahoney. She is an actress. You've probably seen her on stuff like The Walking Dead. And she's here with me today to talk about what she does as a creative in our world. How's it going, Ann?
Oh, it's going good. Happy to be talking about acting.
Yeah, hey,
Always.
So just for anyone out there that doesn't know who she is, can you give us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
I'm an actor. I've been an actor most of my life. And I'm an actor. And you've probably, the things most people know me from are The Walking Dead. I played Olivia on The Walking Dead. And
You were in
Gladys
Logan
what's
Lucky.
that?
Logan Lucky.
Logan Lucky, yes, even Soderbergh film. And I played Gladys Presley on the series Sun Records. And before that, I've actually, my master's is in acting. So I studied acting. I was mostly a theater actress before I kind of accidentally fell into film and television acting.
Okay.
And that's been my more recent life. So yeah, it's a big part of my life. And I continue to study and teach and all that. I love what I do very much.
That's awesome. I'm actually more of a cinematographer myself. That's kind of what I do. I've dabbled in the acting a little bit. My friends, we make some, internet movies or shorts for ourselves. And
That's great.
I've played a Mormon that's actually a hitman. And we knock on people's doors and then take them out. So
I love it.
It was an interesting little thing me and my friends did. But yeah, so I was wondering, you talked about how you studied acting and you have a master's, right?
Yes.
There was a certain type of acting style that you study specifically, and what was that?
Yeah, my master's is specifically centered around the Suzuki method of actor training.
Awesome. What is that? Because I was interested in it, so I wanted to ask you here put you on the spot.
Yeah. Well, so in my undergraduate studies, I studied the mostly Western acting techniques, like Meisner and Strasberg and Stanislavski, which most people think of Stanislavski as the method, which you may have heard of.
Mm-hmm.
And then my master's is in Suzuki, and the Suzuki method of actor training was created by Japanese theater master Tadashi Suzuki.
Okay.
He had a belief that actors did not have the tools to approach the depth of tragedy that they might need to for events like the bombing of Hiroshima.
Okay.
And so he created this. It's actually quite physical actor training. It's vocal and physical work. And he drew from several Japanese traditions. One of them is No theater, NOH. It's an ancient Japanese type of theater. They would build a stage over a cemetery, stomp the floor vigorously, and they believe it awakened the spirits that would possess the actors. And they wore these long skirts so you couldn't see their feet, and they would float across the stage like ghosts. So there's some aspects of the training that are drawn from that. There's some aspects that are drawn from kabuki, which is another ancient Japanese type of theater. You're probably more familiar with it. It's the big makeup and the stomping and the yelling and and then some from martial arts and some from ballet. And essentially, he's getting actors to get in touch with through their physical bodies and exhaustion, and really working the lower half of the body very hard and staying very free in the upper body. Forcing actors to really challenge themselves, and it brings you to that kind of base instinctual place, which is where all great acting comes from, because we don't write stories about cooking eggs in the morning. We write stories about the big stuff in life.
Conflict.
So that's in a nutshell. That's what Suzuki training is.
Awesome. Well, it's really interesting. I haven't studied too much acting, so I just wanted to dig a little deeper there on that aspect. But I know that I've had a couple actors here on the podcast, so I know that some of the people that watch this are aspiring actors. So those are interesting techniques. I don't know where to start with them myself, but
well, I think the different techniques have different. They're all good to have in your toolbox as an actor. The Western techniques come from a place of relaxation, a lot of them, and about talking and listening. And I think that certainly is immediately applicable, important. the thing I like about the Suzuki method of actor training is, to me, it most closely replicates the actual experience of performance,
Okay.
which there's nothing relaxing about,
Right.
no matter how hard you try to relax.
Yeah.
And it's how do you, in the midst of all the things you have to juggle, on stage, it would be production and hitting your light and carrying the story through the line, right? But in camera, it's being in the frame,
Mm-hmm.
being in the moment with all this chaos going around you, hundreds of people,
Mm-hmm.
right, around you. And then how do you, in the midst of all of that, still maintain focus and attachment to instinct? So to me, what you do in the Suzuki method of actor training is, in the midst of very difficult physical circumstances, you are trying to remain relaxed. And to me, that's more like performance.
Wow.
And that's why it's been so wonderfully applicable to my life as an actor.
Okay. You think that it's a lot of being in front of that many people on a set, on a film stage? I mean, with Walking Dead, I mean, I'm guessing there's 100 people probably behind the camera.
Yeah.
And you're dealing with a couple actors just there in that scene, and you really have to push that away, right? You have to ignore what's going on outside of what's happening right there in that moment.
Yeah. And you have to be aware of it too, because there's things you need to listen to and take in, but it's how do you then drop into the moment that you're in with the people
Mm-hmm.
in that scene and maintain your focus while still, you're a cinematographer. You understand how annoying it can be if the actor decides to do something and goes out of frame,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
The frame is what it is.
Right.
You set the frame.
And the blocking set, because the guys the focus pullers are there watching,
Mm-hmm.
and that is difficult, especially in the close up, right?
Yes.
But then again, those moments that an actor gives when they kind of experiment more, right? When they move out a little of that little box, so you have to be prepared with your focus and where you're going to move the camera, because you want to get that, you don't want to miss it.
It's all the same. It's a gauge for what's truthful based on where your audience is,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So when we're in a close up for television,
Mm-hmm.
it's different than a movie. A close up in television, the audience is kind of right in front of your face,
Right?
So what is truthful given this distance,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Those little micro expressions that's in a close-up.
And then blow it up on a film, then blow it up on a movie screen,
Mm-hmm.
and that close-up is a whole different story.
Oh, yeah.
So it's an understanding for where your audience is, what the frame is,
mm-hmm.
and what the truth,
what
your truth, how you're going to gauge what's going to come across as truthful.
Absolutely. Yeah. One of the actors I talked to, he said that was the biggest difference for him between like a theater stage and camera, is that close up, and just like an eyebrow raise you can't in a theater setting, that doesn't matter. No one sees it. Right. But in a close up on a camera, that can just change the entire aspect of a story, So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. I think on stage, you're always pushing out too, in terms of, you can't just have a private experience unless you're in a very, very intimate theater.
Right.
Because no one cares, because they don't know what's going on. Whereas, so that there is an energy to a theatrical performance that is specific. The thing that's tricky about camera work is it really is you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that it's not you on stage, it's you pushed out because you have to send out the message.
Right.
But you have to be super comfortable with letting people see inside of you when you do camera work.
Oh, that's really cool. What was some of your first times transitioning from like theater over to camera? How was that like? What was that like for you?
There was no transition for me.
Oh.
It's actually why I wrote my book. I wrote a book called Slap Courage for the On-Camera Actor that talks specifically about, I was kind of thrown into it.
Okay.
I was doing a play, and a girl I was in the play with, because I never intended to do film and television acting. And, like I sing and dance and do Shakespeare and the Greeks and like theater,
Mm-hmm.
So this girl said to me, a friend of mine, Lyric Rice, she said, you should do film and television acting. And she invited her agent to come to the play, and she signed me. And so my first experience with on-camera acting was my very first audition. It was for a show called Frankenstein. That was a pilot at the time, starring Parker Posey, Adam Goldberg, and Michael Madsen.
Okay.
And this is for the guest starring role in the pilot. And I booked the very first thing I auditioned for. And within weeks I was on set, and I had I had no idea.
Wow.
So I was immediately trying to make correlations between what I understood about stage acting and the frame. Now, the thing that was a very easy transition for me, which later I got the language for, was on stage, there's so much that you're imagining. You know, a teacup might not actually be a teacup because we don't want to have glass on stage.
Okay.
Right? On set, the teacup will be
a teacup.
It is. So when my first scene, we shot Frankenstein in reverse order. So it was my first scene was after I had been taped to a toilet, nearly beaten up, nearly killed by Michael Madsen. After all of this, my first time ever on set.
So to be after all
of that had occurred,
yeah.
Sitting on the back of the ambulance, describing what had happened, bawling my eyes out, right? And I was like, oh my God. But you know, of course, you go to makeup and they do your makeup and you look messed up. So you look at yourself in the mirror and you go, oh my God, this is horrific, right?
Yeah.
And then they bring you on set and there's fog and a police tape line.
Yeah.
And you're sitting on the actual back of an ambulance and there are medical workers and there's a crowd that's concerned looking at you.
Right.
And it's like, I just remember going, and the language came later. I remember going, oh, it's all here.
You don't have to imagine it.
I don't have to imagine it. And I don't have to go like, no, I know that's a styrofoam rock. You know, like it's all there.
Wow.
And so it almost becomes more like inhabiting than it is like projecting.
Right. Living in that, being in that, seeing what's around you and using it.
Yeah. And trusting that the audience is not stupid. They can see where you are and they are making the connections. And if you push it in that circumstance, you're actually going to gild the lily. And that's when the acting comes across as false.
That's really cool. I bet that was amazing to be thrown right into that. But I mean, it was probably stressful.
It was terrifying. Terrifying.
Which I actually think is funny is the way I think about it is like, it was terrifying, but they wanted that moment of after everything when you were having to describe what happened to you. And it was almost like maybe that moment being terrifying could have helped that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
So I actually wanted to ask about, so you're in New Orleans, you said, right?
Yeah.
Is that where you're from? Have you always been in New Orleans? Okay. Yeah. And you were doing theater there and you met the girl that that introduced you to her agent?
Yeah, this was all after graduate school. So I went away to both schools. I moved to New York 18 days before 9/11.
Oh, wow.
Well done. And it just kind of begun my equity journey there. Actors Equity is the union for theater actors when 9/11 happened. And so I worked in World Trade Center relief with victims of the attacks because there was no acting work. And so then I moved back to New Orleans in 2003 and 2004 was when I was doing that play.
Okay.
And this is a friend I had for a while, but she was like, you should get in on this film thing going on in New Orleans.
Wow, that's cool. Yeah. I was kind of figuring out, I always wanted to know, I moved to LA as a cinematographer because I do more corporate stuff. I do commercials. I do a lot of different things. But, I thought LA, Hollywood, this is where I want to be a camera operator. This is where I want to be.
Yeah.
How is it finding work when you're not in Hollywood? Is that hard? Is it seem normal to you, or you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I mean, compared to to friends that I've had that have moved to LA, it's been way easier for me.
I bet, actually.
Because it's out there. There is a type. I really do think like stuff that films in LA versus stuff that films in New York versus stuff that films in the South.
Yeah.
Like there is a different kind of aesthetic to those things.
Okay.
LA is definitely I feel more polished in a way in terms of like there's a lot more network television out there, which to me is like it's more packaged. Like, if you're watching like a network procedural, like I don't know, 911 or whatever.
Yeah, okay.
The girl like on the side of the building about to jump to her death. Right. Who's been sobbing still looks real pretty and kind of put together.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean. Yeah.
So, and then like you have like stuff like, you think about Better Call Saul.
Okay.
And on his best day,
right,
he still looks really rough because that's kind of the aesthetic of that kind of show.
Right. And where's that filmed at? And that where
I think that's filmed in New Mexico.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
So I just think like LA, for me, the South was the right start because they were looking, when they come to shoot things in the South, if they're featuring the South, they're looking for salt of the earth type people who
Are there.
already feel Southern.
Right.
So it's like you're not pulling somebody in from
Long Beach,
Canada,
California.
or whatever. Yeah, who has to suddenly like try to be
from the South.
A Southern person. So, I mean, for young actors coming up, like I teach college level acting too. I teach one class a semester, and I'm like, if you feel like you have to go to LA, do it now, because now is the time before you have like children and a mortgage, and when you can really just throw yourself into it and be broke and eat ramen noodles and ketchup sandwiches, like go for it. But my belief is that unless you have an agent in LA, it's almost impossible. I feel the same way about New York and even about the Southeast now. If you can get into the market by doing like little one-liners or even getting on set as a PA to start. So you go see if you even want to do it. Because if you have no concept of what an actor's day looks like on set, if you think it's red carpet and like buying yachts, it's going to be disappointing to you very quickly.
It's patience.
Yeah, it's a lot of patience. It's a lot of no's. It's a lot, not no's is the wrong word. It's a lot of, she's great, but not right for this particular group that we're casting. So anyway, that's kind of my thought on that. If you can be a big fish in a small pond for a while and build up credits, and then you go to LA. And so you go to LA with this resume instead of going to LA going, I went to acting school, and everybody goes, so did everybody else.
Exactly.
Right?
I agree. That's kind of actually one of the things I said when I lived up in the Bay Area. Actually, one of the reasons I wasn't going to move to LA, as I was saying, I was like, I'm a big fish in a small pond here in the Bay Area as a film. I was doing corporate and film stuff, but me and my wife just kind of made the jump. COVID happened, and we're like, man, we're just stuck. We're just here. And, it's like we're in the Bay Area. It's expensive. And it was like, it's a little cheaper in LA. So we're like, let's just go try it out. This is a moment to try it. So
why not?
Exactly. New York's on our list, too, actually. We're interested. I might jump all the way over to the East Coast eventually.
Well, give it a minute. If the real estate prices keep dropping like they have since COVID, it might be an ideal time.
Yeah, I was in the Navy for 6 years. And so that's actually, I want to use my VA loan, because I want to be able to purchase a home, maybe eventually.
Yeah,
but it's hard to do in California.
And New York people are leaving right now. I think if you purchase something now, you would be one of those people. They're going to come back,
right?
But like you'd be one of those people who
bought it when it was low, right?
Yep.
Yeah, it might be a really good idea. So The Walking Dead. How is it being on The Walking Dead?
It was awesome.
I bet.
Yeah.
How many? It was 3 seasons, right?
Yeah.
It was 3 seasons.
Yeah, and when I got on was like season 5, so it was like jumping on a moving train. Right.
It was just a smooth. It was a working machine that was already going.
Oh, yeah. It was gorgeous because I've done a lot of and I love them. I love doing an indie film. I'll sit on a rock. I don't care. I don't need a trailer.
Yeah.
I love a great script, and I love a process where you feel like at any moment things could fall apart. I have no problem with that. I'm in. I love it.
It's more raw.
But this was like, everybody is just so at the top of their game on that show.
Oh, I bet.
So, and the people, they're so cautious about casting in terms of not just talent, but like your reputation kind of has to precede you in terms of like, are you easy to work with? Because the reality is for the majority of the months that we're doing this, we're going to be outside in Atlanta in the summer.
Oh, wow.
Possibly in the woods with bugs and mud. And, nobody wants to deal with, somebody who's prissy in the midst of all that.
How is that humidity like that? I mean, acting in humidity, that's
intense.
That's intense.
But I'm from New Orleans. So for me, it was like,
right.
And that's what I live in. So that was no, big change for me, but it's a long day, it's especially when you shoot those scenes where we're all outside and it's 12 hours in the sun. And
is a lot of it exteriors outside and then interiors? Are they on sound stages or are the actual buildings there?
When I was on the show, Alexandria was a real exterior. It's a piece of property. I may be incorrect about this, but I'm pretty sure that they actually purchased this swath of land in Sonoy, and they built the houses that were in that community.
Okay.
which they then sold.
Oh, wow.
And some of them were already sold to people. So there were a couple families that lived for real
on the set
in Alexandria.
Yeah.
So we would be like shooting sometimes, blowing stuff up, and you would see these people on their porch, their glass of wine.
Yeah, this is amazing.
Watching us blow zombies up, it was great. So yeah, and actually where the pantry, the pantry wasn't, it was a big garage.
Okay.
So that was fun to shoot because you could move a lot of places. But the shooting, anytime you saw a scene where I was in the armory, that was the tiniest room.
Oh, wow.
And so there was all kinds of creative stuff that had to go into shooting in there. And I think after I died on the show, I think they did move the armory to a soundstage.
Right. Okay.
So that they could pull the walls away and not have to deal with.
Right.
We had the poor camera guy and the sound guy
in the corner
with the boom in a closet trying to get some of those shots. So yeah,
it's interesting how much they go into that. It's cool that they were able to just take a location that they physically had somewhere and then recreate it on a soundstage.
They built it. They built all those houses.
So they just tore it down, you think, and took it? I mean,
or there was nothing there. If they built Alexandria.
Wow.
So there would be construction workers working on this house over here. Mm-hmm. We're filming in this one, and yeah,
that's crazy. And then they sold them afterwards.
Yeah. I think they've sold. Yeah, I think they've sold. I don't think they're still shooting in Alexandria. It burned, right?
I think so.
So, yeah. Yeah.
How is and then I guess my other question is Jeffrey Morgan. I mean, he's amazing. I bet how is it working with him?
He's great. I think when I teach my students, I'm trying to talk to them all the time about how because I get a lot of I'm not good at memorization, and I'm like, then you're in the wrong profession.
It's a lot of memorization.
Especially it's a lot, and it's fast. If you want to go into film and television work in particular, it's you don't have months and months to learn a script. Mm-hmm. And when you think about Jeffrey, Negan's basically the King Lear of The Walking Dead. He and Rick Grimes, Rick Grimes would have the speeches, and I think about the volume of what he had to memorize in a given episode. Jeffrey's character is real darn close in terms of
absolutely.
Negan is a vociferous dude, right? So I just think about the amount of memorization he had to turn around quickly, and then also he's like, I understand when an actor is in an intense situation and they feel like they need to stay in character and all that. I get it, but Jeffrey's able to kind of step out, chill, and then step in.
Wow. And just get that intense and just be that deep into it. Just out of, I mean, I remember I think the first thing I saw him in was the Watchmen and stuff like that. That was just a really cool movie. And I just think he's just a really cool actor. That's really, I watched some of your other podcasts that you talked about him, and that was why I wanted to hear what you had to say about him.
Yeah,
that'd be really cool. I noticed that you have a Patreon.
Yeah, I do.
What do you think about Patreon?
Well, I just started it. I started because actually I was listening to a podcast called A Christian Reads the Tao Te Ching, which I was finding fascinating. And so he kept mentioning his Patreon page, and I decided to support him because I really his work is really fascinating to me. And then I had a couple friends say, you should do one of those because there's Cameo where you can record birthday messages for people. And I was like, well, what if I instead of that, if I have a Patreon page, I can just offer people what they would get on a Cameo.
Right. Once or twice a year, right? Because I saw you meet with people once or twice a year. That's your biggest package and all that.
Yeah.
I think it's a very interesting website. It's a very interesting platform. I want to do a Patreon eventually. Once I want to hit my a little bit more of a following, and then I'm gonna try. But I think it's really cool that you're able to be a creator and use that to connect with your audience, and they can kind of subscribe to you like a Netflix.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I haven't figured out how to leverage it to reach out to get a lot of patrons yet.
I think it takes time.
Yeah, it does. I have
fiddling.
two really great. I have two. That's it right now, and they're really, really great. But I got kind of like weary of social media and like sharing these like little quips about like this is what's going on right now or not
Yeah.
going on. And I was like, what if I could just get on there, once every 2 weeks and I record a video and I send it just to the patrons and I say, and it's whatever's going on, including nothing.
Right.
Like nothing's going on, or like I got this lead about writing something and then it didn't happen, and like all the behind the scenes stuff that like no one ever says on social media, like I lost out on this role to this amazingly famous person, right? But I do that on my Patreon because I feel like that's what the exchange is that if you're gonna really invest in me as an artist and the journey of what I go through, if you're that interested, then I'm gonna be really
100% real,
really transparent about it.
Yeah.
And like this was great. This is up in the air. This happened. This is not happening. And like so I just decided to back off of social media a little bit and focus more there where I can really connect and talk about the real stuff.
Yeah, that's really cool. I think that's a good idea. I think it's a good way to find your fans that really want to see the real, and it's a good way to connect with them.
Yeah,
I think it'll be pretty fun as it goes along. Do you have any advice for actors starting out, like what they should do out there in the world? That's a very broad question, but you can go ahead and go any way you want with it.
I am of the opinion, I know not everyone is, I think training is important. I do. And I don't necessarily mean like college degree training, but I just think training is important.
Yeah.
Good training is important.
Yeah.
And there's some training out there that's not good, but I think training is super, super important because I think that it prepares you for understanding and investigating within yourself if this is truly something you want to do. Not in a way like if you can do, and I hate this statement, if you could do anything else with your life, I'm like,
yeah.
Okay. I mean, our profession is great and it is competitive, but let's get over ourselves. Like, sometimes you don't know. Sometimes you think to yourself, wow, I think I would really like to do this thing. So the best way to do that is to get training.
Right.
To see if you're good at it, to see if, because I know people who went through college and got degrees and then got out of the other end and went, nah, it's
not for me.
It's not for me. Right. So it's a good thing to do. So training and then continuing to train. I still do Suzuki training.
Yeah. I think always continuing to learn. I think that if you ever, one of the things I always tell people is you should never stop learning. Right. If you ever stop learning or you become stagnant like that, then you're not gonna grow, right?
Yeah.
So
and the truth is you are changing. Our lives, they carve us out, like, they carve things into us, they change us. And if we're not continually going to a place where we're forcing ourselves to check in on ourselves and be authentic, then, and that's what training does, right? Then you're not, it's just like a doctor who's not doing continuing education. Right. It's the same thing. So, and then the other piece I would say is to do things. Yeah. Just to start doing things, because there's this nebulous word that they love to use in our industry, networking. And I'm like, and what it leads to is like, contacting people that you don't know and being like, can we have coffee? And those people being like, I don't know you. How do we, don't do that. Do things. Go be in a play. Go get your friends and get a camera and write something and make it. Like, do things. And that's where networking happens, is in the midst of taking classes, doing things. You start to meet people that way, and it's organic. You can't make it happen any faster than it's going to. You might be that 1 in a million person that like is in a diner and the casting director's like,
you look perfect for this role.
Right.
Yeah.
But most of us, it was some combination of doing things and training that put us around a certain group of people that then it materialized into work.
It just takes time. And you just got to keep learning, keep pushing, keep trying.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Ann, thank you very much for being here today. We're wrapping up here towards the end. Thank you for being on my podcast.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
I hope that power and internet stabilizes for you where you're at.
Yeah.
And hope to see you more in the future in different roles.
Yes.
And we'll stay in contact, hopefully, and all that good stuff.
Cool. All right. Thank you.
Trouble connecting to the internet.
My Alexa speaker just started talking to me. Alexa, stop. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. This has been another podcast, Make Media Studios. I'm Derek, and we are out.